because in the UK there's like 23,000 people with diplomatic immunity. After reading that, as we were like, geez, how many of these people are walking about who in their head could have the thought that I can actually get away with pushing the boundaries a wee bit more than a normal person would. I can go drink driving on a Saturday night and get away with it. I can push the envelope of how I interact with people.
Welcome back to Maturing Cheddar, episode 11, bringing you a variety of cross-Atlantic viewpoints from the UK and the US about this weird and wonderful world that we live in. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and follow us on Instagram at Maturing Cheddar. Today we have Lewis, Todd, and myself, Ryan. We're going to be touching on what I think is a very interesting subject. Should diplomats have to abide by the law of the country that they are in? So currently they are protected by this thing called diplomatic immunity, which means the diplomats are not subject to the laws of the host country that they're currently working in. But this has been kind of brought into the spotlight very recently by a tragic story.
Yes, so thanks, Ryan. A tragic story indeed. So on the 27th of August 2019, it's been reported that a Volvo was driving the wrong way near an RAF field in RAF Croton, struck a motorbike that was driving on the right side of the correct side of the road, the left-hand side of the road, in England. After he approached the car over a crest, he had no time to react, and the motorcyclist hit the car. The motorcyclist, called Harry Dunn, was pronounced dead on the same day. He left behind his mum, dad, and his twin. But the really significant thing why this has caught the attention is that the driver of the Volvo is the suspect is Anne Sakulas, and she's the wife of a USA diplomat. So she originally cooperated with the police, and in any other case it would be a normal open and shut case where you'd probably get done for some kind of manslaughter or negligent driving. But actually she was able to waive diplomatic immunity, left the country. So the family left in this horrible position where they can't get justice for Harry Dunn, the motorcyclist, and it sparked a debate across both countries actually.
So she was driving on the wrong side of the street when she hit Harry.
Yeah. So apparently the story is, and this is all speculation from reports and what investigative journalists have reported, because she's not actually been charged yet, which is when officially the police say, right, okay, we think you've done this, essentially, and but essentially she's driving a car. She's obviously made a mistake, quite an easy mistake to make, after visiting what is believed to be her husband at RAF Croton. Gone the wrong way down probably a country lane, don't actually know the road. Unfortunately, Harry's been approaching on the same side of the road, and it's believed to have been at a crest, so just enough of a blind spot that neither car or motorcycle could react in time. That's the incident. It's left Harry Dunn dead. I believe Anne Sakulis is probably devastated. Also, it's been reported that she may have had 2 children in the car. She would probably witnessed this and gone through the whole trauma. And it appears at the moment there's going to be this diplomatic immunity being waived, and there's going to be no answering the crime, basically, and it'll be forever left open. So it's sparked a real wave of opinion around the country, especially in the UK, but also also in the US. Have you got any raw opinions based on the series of events, questions, etc.?
I think it's crazy, this idea of diplomatic immunity. Just because you work for another country's government, that you don't have to abide by the laws of the host country you're in. I mean, so you could effectively kill someone. I mean, this is what happened here, but it wasn't deliberate. But you could deliberately murder someone, leave the country, and possibly never have to answer for your crimes. That's what it seems to me, this idea of diplomatic immunity. And I think people need to be held accountable for their actions. So it's kind of very weird, this idea of diplomatic immunity. And I hadn't really heard much about it for this case.
I agree with Ryan. It's a concept. It doesn't really make sense to me, because if you think as like a normal person, you go anywhere in the world, holidays or traveling anywhere, you know automatically you have to drive on the correct side of the road for that place that you're in, abide by the rules and regulations of that land. And if you don't, you risk, repercussions just as you would in your home country. And like, as like a tourist at different points in my life, like, you're made very aware of, like, don't do drugs in the first place if that's your position. But like in certain countries, you stay well away from drugs because their penalties are a lot more severe than maybe the UK. And so because of that, you adjust your behaviour, and it doesn't really make sense at I'm not going to say political elite, but a certain class of people based on their occupation are provided with an exemption to the laws of the country. It just sort of seems wrong that I have to abide one way in my life, and someone else can do something totally different.
I think that's the argument, isn't it? I think first of all, it's probably pertinent to like try and think about why diplomatic immunity may have been originally thought up. So, just looking at some examples where diplomats or foreign ambassadors were allowed diplomatic immunity, called diplomatic immunity, but essentially allowed these diplomats to travel freely in that country, especially through times of conflict. So you can understand why that might be valuable for parley reasons, especially during times of conflict, to keep that line of communication open and the dialogue going. I've read that in World War II, the diplomatic community in some form was upheld, so that we had ambassadors traveling between the different states, and that I think in this particular example that we opened with, the issue we have from what I've gathered from what you two have said, is the issue is with the severity with the crime with which people can get away with now. If someone can essentially kill someone, whether it's by accident or on purpose. This was obviously by accident. I'm not saying I did this on purpose. Surely there needs to be a line drawn where diplomatic immunity is, there's exceptions.
Explain there. It's kind of like, don't shoot the messenger, which in times of conflict, I think that makes perfect sense. To keep government relations in some way open to try and reach like a peaceful resolution. But you got to draw the line somewhere. And I think also, like, what is the purpose of these people? They're coming to another country to either work on government relations or cross-government, cross-country, projects, whether it's military related or public development. But you're still you're still a person in like that country, so it isn't clear why you wouldn't abide by the rules of that country. Because if you're going to be in the UK, you're going to use a pound, to purchase stuff in the shop. You have to. Your life becomes that of like a UK citizen. It'd be silly, kind of like let's say this is jumping to an extreme, but if I live in the Sahara Desert, I'm not going to wear 3 layers of coats and jumpers the same way I might wear from in like Siberia. You adapt to your environment. Now that's like a bit of a far-fetched example there, but you have to do what's right for your environment and the place you're in. And if you're in like another country, you got to like abide by their customs and laws. And I just don't really. I'm just struggling to see where you draw the line now, because I just wouldn't have diplomatic immunity at all.
I think this is interesting because, like, going back to the Harry Dunn case, so the woman who hit him in the car was actually the wife of the diplomat, not even the diplomat themselves. And this diplomatic immunity law is quite wide, as in it protects the whole immediate family of the diplomat.
Yeah.
So even though the wife and the children are in the UK, they're not actually working. I mean, you could almost kind of living their day-to-day life, kind of vacation style, but still they're not subject to laws, which is strange. Maybe as a diplomat, maybe there's I can possibly understand it for the actual diplomat, because maybe the stuff in their job, they need to do some stuff that might be illegal or something to get their job done. But for the immediate family, I don't see why they would need it.
Well,
unless the host country was just going to imprison them and try and get some ransom out of the US or something like that.
Well, it might be in cases where, in this particular case, let's go to it's the husband who is working for the United States government, and the immediate family is probably a risk, at risk, right? I'm trying to think of it from the point of view why we do that. They may be at risk. So if let's say in an extreme case they get kidnapped, they could then where the kidnappers may have a motive to try and blackmail that official, and there may be some methods that allow that family to be released or etc. Or even my example is probably far-fetched and probably, like you said, not reasonable. But again, at this level, maybe they don't give out all the reasons, because if you start giving out all the reasons why they may give diplomatic immunity, that opens up areas of weakness for that country and for other countries, etc. Once you know that information, why they're giving diplomatic immunity, then someone can exploit it. At the same time, in this whole situation, I don't believe Anne Sekulas automatically waived diplomatic immunity, claimed diplomatic immunity all alone. I'm guessing lawyers, government officials.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what's starting to come out. Probably suggested, right, go, get out of the country, and then that's backed up by the fact that Anne Sekulas has not been given back by the USA. Right? There's a bigger motive behind this, and that motive, will we ever be privy to it, or is it more of a symbolic kind of gesture? If we give him once, it has more of a connotation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, the US, they can't make a one-off case and just give in and send her back to the UK and break that diplomatic immunity, because this reduces confidence in the future for diplomats from the US who go to the UK or other countries. Maybe they'll be worried that something they do there may later be a repercussion and they'll get sent back to that country for prison. So I don't think she's going to be sent back by the US for sure, because I don't think they can have any exceptions to this rule.
Yeah, Ryan, just touch on what you're saying there, because there seems to be in my head a bit of turmoil here between diplomatic immunity versus a country extraditing someone who's committed a crime. I can get the diplomatic immunity piece where you want to encourage diplomats to go to dangerous countries, because it's initially not attractive for someone to leave their life in the United Kingdom or the United States and travel to a developing country where laws maybe aren't enforced as strictly as they can be or are in other parts of the world. I know it's more dangerous, so you want that person to, like, if something happens and things start to turn sour, you can, like, not be prosecuted there by that government because we'll, as the United States, protect you, and then you can come home and be okay. But at a certain point, like where this lady, she chose to leave the United Kingdom and return to the United States, and there's an ongoing investigation, I think then in comes a realm of, and what the UK Crown Prosecution Service can do is that if the police find there's a case here to be answered for, they can start extradition filings. And I don't know how lengthy a process that is, but is it a straightforward extradition process the same way they could, like, come after a normal person, or is it more convoluted because this person's a diplomat? It just sort of feels like it's a political toolkit that's been put in place to, sweeten the deal for people to go and move abroad. But in examples like this, where it comes to the public eye, it just comes across as a means of politicians looking after their own, or the political sphere protecting their own, and not truly being held accountable to the laws of the land. There's one rule for me as a civilian, and another rule for those in power.
That's a really good way to probably summarize it. I think what I would say in all of this, especially this case, there's been a lot of media coverage of the two parents, the mum and the dad, who have had media coverage over in the UK, but now they've started to enter media coverage in the US as well. And I'm sure, Ryan, you can vouch for this. They've been on several big news outlets. But Charlotte Charles, the mother of Harry Dunn, she's gained quite a lot of support, especially as a mother, if you like, for her compassion towards Anne Sakulas. And she's been praised for pointing out that Anne must be undergoing some kind of trauma as well in all of this for killing. At the end of the day, she's a mother, a wife, and she's a normal human being, really. And she's killed a 19-year-old person, unfortunately. And Charlotte's been saying, look, she needs this for closure as well, for her own mental well-being, and then she can see a therapist, etc., etc. And just set an example to her kids as well. I think that's one thing that was probably overlooked by everybody, apart from Charlotte Charles, who's, unfortunately caught in all of the middle of this storm now, being the mom or being a parent of a child she'd lost. So quite an interesting angle, and I wonder, I think that's the angle. I think that's the angle to trying to get her to come back on her own terms. They keep saying that, well, the family lawyer does say that there are ways that they're ready to pull the trigger, if you like, on extradition.
If I put myself in the shoes of Anna, then I don't think she's ever voluntarily going to go back to the UK, because that means she could face prosecution, go to court in the UK, and have prison time. I think once she returns to the UK voluntarily, that's it. She's not going to be able to leave again until the court case is over. And the potential of going to prison for multiple years, I think that will completely deter her from voluntarily going back to UK, especially because she has young children. I mean, that's just me putting myself in her shoes. I would never do that, even though she might get closure. She's risking prison sentence.
What about you, Todd? Are the USA making this worse worse than it actually is in terms of a political relationship with the UK, or will this whole thing blow over if it stays as it is?
It's a great question, Lewis, because as you noted, the high level media interest that was in the UK here on the terrible event is now spread cross Atlantic, and there's some media coverage, I believe, with the parents having met. I think Donald Trump in the White House. So it's a really difficult one for both governments now to address, because it's in front of us all. I think part of me thinks it will be blown over. It will be a settlement that will occur, and there's no price you can put in a child's life. Any parent will say that. But I think something will happen behind the scenes where a number, a financial number, will be put in front of the parents, and some things will be said maybe about setting up a fund or a trust, something in Harry's name and memory, and steps will be taken to move this out of the public eye and to close it out, and for the two governments to move on past it. It's a horrible thing. It raises an interesting point, what happens diplomats when they do commit crimes, and are we as a public, do we feel safe? As a member of the US or the UK public, do you feel safe knowing that? Because in the UK there's 23,000 people with diplomatic immunity. After reading that, as we were geez, how many of these people are walking about who in their head could have the thought that I can actually get away with pushing the boundaries a wee bit more than a normal person would. I can go drink driving on a Saturday night and get away with it. I can push the envelope of how I interact with people, verging on, sexual harassment. And there are certain things which occur where it can be automatically, I think, prosecuted because of the breach of diplomatic immunity. But I think in this case, both governments are going to take the view that it was a horrible accident that occurred, but they'll brush it aside and move on, because in their view, they'll have more larger political things that they want to cooperate on than to fall out over this, which could come across as saying you're making the life of a single individual, you're belittling the life of a single individual, which is definitely not what I want to portray. But I think governments, they'll take an approach to look at the bigger picture, and diplomatic relations to continue on a positive note are more important than penalising one person's foolish actions.
So this has been Maturing Cheddar with episode 11. Hope you have enjoyed our discussion and debate, varying viewpoints on this idea of diplomatic immunity. It'd be great to know what your guys' views are on this kind of subject that's been brought to the spotlight recently. Please leave comments where possible. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube and Instagram. See everyone next week. Bye.